Souda Bay is a deep water port and naval base for Greece, but it isn't terribly attractive, but it is very well set up for cruise ships. After your berth, you get off the ship, you walk into the immigration centre, which you pass through very quickly, and as soon as you come out, you turn left, and there's a booth which is selling fairly cheap tickets, a couple of euros, which will take you into Chania, and they drop you between the new town and the old town, which is where most people want to go. So we walk down into the old town, and as you come down the beautiful Venetian harbour, there is this medieval lighthouse, and that we actually walked around to, as you'll see shortly. The water was incredibly clear, so the number of glass bottom boats was no great surprise. As we walked along the dockside, here is what is very obviously a mosque, or has been a mosque, and this proved to be the case. It's not been a mosque for a long time now, but it's used as a community centre, and its history is written on this plaque. Pause if you wish to read it completely. The whole place is really quite photogenic, and we carried on walking along this side, and in the end trying to reach the lighthouse, which, as you can see here, is quite a long way away, probably more than we thought at first. There must have been some horse-drawn taxis, but where they were going from we never found out, so we don't know where they went or anything else about them. Walking further along the dockside, we came across these buildings, which are Venetian boat building sheds, very similar to those that you find in Heraklion at the other end of the island. So, for no great surprise, the Venetian influence is all over Crete, and indeed it's known as the Venetian harbour in Chania. They're obviously being used for other things in between times, but there's a lot of them here, more than there are in Heraklion. It was much breezier here, which is why I've killed the original soundtrack, but again you can see just how clear the water is, and how tricky it is just near the shore. But this undoubtedly shelters this harbour very well indeed. There's the lighthouse all the way down there. It's well worth doing. There's these things to have a look at as you go along, but it was closed as it happened when we got there, and there are those sheds across the other side, and that is all the way around that we've walked. This is the plaque for the lighthouse, so again pause if you want to read all about its history. This was not quite as close as we got, but it was certainly the best photograph of this we took. And there's the lighthouse, and on the opposite side of the port entrance, the fortification. Later on, as we walked back up to the bus, Ruth found a new necklace to buy, the one she'd brought with her wasn't working with some of the dresses that she'd got, and so on we went back to the ship. When we looked through our window the next morning, we could see Seven Seas Grandeur moored in the bay and tendering its passengers to port. This took them to the old port. We happened to be moored at the new port, and there's only one berth there. It has an advantage: you get straight off the ship, but there are no walkable routes into Mykonos Old Town, so you've got to take either a shuttle bus or a tour bus to get anywhere from here. It's a beautiful spot, very scenic, and there's Mykonos Town in the more or less in the centre there. And this is looking on the other side. You can see that the roads going up that fairly bare hillside. Lots of properties, a lot of hotels and the like along this area, and what looks like quite a nice bay with some beach. And this is the new port, as I only got one berth. Rather than simply go to Mykonos Old Town, which is very pretty but is definitely a tourist trap, we decided to have an excursion which showed more of the island. And our first stop was overlooking the island of Delos, which is a very sacred site in Greek mythology and is absolutely covered in archaeology. And as you'll hear from our guide, who is a London-born lass who married a Greek and has lived on Mykonos for many, many years, it is very severely restricted onto who can actually stay there.
Archaeologists who go in to continue their excavations. The rest of us only go in for 4-hour stints to see the temples and the excavations, and then you have to leave.
The second stop was at a very pretty spot indeed, and it's the beach where parts of Shirley Valentine were filmed in 1989. It's very popular, but this means it's covered in lounges in the summer. And here is one of several islands whose silhouettes look very much like giants who have been slain in battle and are lying on their sides, and so mythology has it. We had a break at a small town called Anomira, which is actually our guide's hometown, and where she and her husband's family all live. It has a really very nice church, high orthodox, as you might well imagine. This is obviously a beautiful pew, presumably for a priest, and a very orthodox view of Christ high up in the dome. I don't speak Greek, so I've absolutely no idea what the words say. Now, we all know that cats were worshipped in Egypt as gods, and most of them have never forgotten it, and here is one who's proving the point that it and nothing else deserves to be worshipped in that church. The screen at the end of the church is absolutely amazing. I was brought up as a low church Anglican, so there is no iconography. So this, in terms of religion, means absolutely nothing to me, but you can certainly appreciate the sheer beauty and extravagance of this church, which is a very small community indeed. We then were taken to the new coach park, which is about half a mile perhaps from Mykonos, and you can see Mykonos Town over in the distance. And we walked through it to a place called Paraportiani, and you can see the details of that here. As we got there, photographers were taking pictures on this white painted building, which is actually several churches built over a period, quite a period of time, which are all higgledy-piggledy, you almost might say. There's an archaeological site, an excavation next to it, and this all makes clear that this road led down to the port in antiquity. And then a little further on through these twisty narrow streets, which apparently again were designed to foil invaders and make them confused while the locals knew their way about. There are little shops all over everywhere. And this was our first sight of the absolutely iconic Mykonos windmills, although we saw quite a few of these through the 2 weeks on the cruise. They are all in private hands. None is a windmill. One was under restoration, which you can see up there, and one of them, believe it or not, is actually an Airbnb. I dare say it cost an arm and a leg, but you can actually go and stay in one of these. And this is looking back at the old town from the windmill side, and this is known as Little Venice because this was built when the island was under Venetian control. And this is looking back from the ship over to Mykonos Town. You can see Seven Seas tenders still moving about. Our animal that night was a rabbit. It looks really good from this angle, but the cabin steward didn't move the eyes from the little plaque that came on it, so it does look a little bit strange when you look at it head on. So that is the end of this particular video. The next one I'm only going to do one site, but that one will be Ephesus.